Hi, I'm Andy Brown, and today we're going to be continuing our talk on the new product process. Now, in the last session, I showed you a model for the new product process that focused on network effects. Now remember, network effects are where the people who use a product or service build up into a network, and the existence of that network drives more people to use that product or service. Now, in video recorders, the VHS war, we saw that if you were considering buying a video recorder and trying to decide whether to buy a VHS or a Betamax, then if all your friends owned a VHS recorder and borrowing tapes from your friends was important to you, then you'd probably buy a VHS. However, if you lived alone in the wilderness where there was nobody to borrow tapes from, then all your friends having VHS recorders would make no difference to you. In this case, the network effect would be small to zero. Now, if only one person used the internet, then it wouldn't be very valuable. But if billions of people use it, including your friends, companies you want to sell to, buy from, or work for, then that same internet is now a whole lot more valuable. So, let's start off by building a model for the new product process that I showed you in the last video. We're going to build a simple model of a market with two products, Product 1 and Product 2. Product 1 and Product 2 will compete with each other for market share and market domination. Now, most markets have more than two products, but we're able to get many of the learnings we need just by having a simplified model like this. Likewise, there's lots of other subtleties that can be happening in markets, but we'll just focus on a simple model, and then we can add in things we need to. Now, the first thing we'll do is add a stock to represent the number of customers out there using Product 1. This is the installed base. Now, you'll see it has a box around it, which means in the model it's a stock. Next, we need to have a way of increasing that stock. This is the sales of Product 1. The more we sell, the more is in the installed base. So we'll add a pipeline to represent the sales. Now, in a more comprehensive model, we'd also need to think about depleting that stock. For example, people may stop using the product, or it may break. However, let's not worry about this for our simple model. Next, we want to think about what is going to drive those sales. And it's going to be two things that in the model we term variables. Firstly, there's going to be the total demand of the market. And secondly, there's going to be the market share that Product 1 has. Next, we connect total demand to sales of Product 1 and then connect market share to sales of Product 1. The direction of the arrow is important and it signifies the direction of the relationship. This means that total demand drives sales, not the other way round. And this means market share drives sales. We add a plus sign to each connector. Now, the positive or negative sign tells us the relationship. So the plus sign means that an increase in the total demand leads to an increase in the sales of Product 1. And an increase in market share leads to an increase in the sales of Product 1. Now, market share of Product 1 is influenced by how attractive consumers find the product. So, we create a variable for attractiveness and link it to market share. Of course, this product doesn't exist in a vacuum, but rather it competes against another product, Product 2 that we will be building. And our market share is determined not just by the attractiveness of our product, but also by how attractive other products are. So, we need another variable, total attractiveness of all products. We link our new variable, total attractiveness of new products, to market share of our product. And we add a negative sign on the arrow. This means the relationship is negative. If the total attractiveness of all products increases, then, other things being equal, our market share will reduce. Similarly, we connect the attractiveness of our product to the total attractiveness of all products. And we add a positive sign, because if our product increases in attractiveness, then the total attractiveness of all products must increase. So, what determines the attractiveness of our product? Here, we are considering just the network effects, i.e. having lots of people using the product. We'll worry about other effects in other videos. So for network effects, it's going to be driven by the installed base of the product. The more people using the product, the greater the network effect and the greater its attractiveness. So we'll create a variable called effect of compatibility on attractiveness of product 1. And we'll link it up from the installed base stock to our new variable. And it's a positive, because the bigger the installed base, the more the network effect. And we link up from our new variable the effect of compatibility on attractiveness of product 1 to the attractiveness of product 1. And again, it's a positive variable. The more the effect, the more the attractiveness. Now we'll add two variables so that we can control the effect of compatibility. One variable will be the threshold for compatibility effects. This is the threshold below which the network effects are unimportant. You can imagine that if only one person in each city has a VHS recorder, then they can't easily drive to the next city to borrow a videotape. But if everyone on your street has a video recorder, you can easily borrow a tape, and hence network effects are important. As well as threshold, we will have another variable, sensitivity of attractiveness to installed base. This controls how important the network effect is in driving sales. You can imagine a product that you consume alone and do not rely on others to use as having a low sensitivity. Think of, for example, a television or a kitchen gadget. The television doesn't have tapes or discs that you can share, and the kitchen gadget is likely to remain in your kitchen, used solely by yourself. In this case, the sensitivity value would be low. In contrast, the internet would be a pretty lonely place without others using it. So the more using it, the more useful it is to you. So the sensitivity is much higher. Next, we'll add in a generic term to account for the effect of other factors on the attractiveness of product 1. So this is just lumping together all the other things that may affect it. Now remember, this is just a simple model. And for our model, we will want to introduce some random effects, so the two products can go in different paths. This is the equivalent of random numbers for selecting the black or white stones in the Polya process. We'll add in a noise seed for random effects on attractiveness of product 1, and we'll add in a standard deviation of random effects on attractiveness. Now, at the start we said we'd have two competing products, but so far we only have one product. So next, we need to add in a mirror image of all the stocks, flows and variables we've added for product 1, but for product 2. We quickly add those in now. We'll also add in a structure here so we can easily get the product 1 and product 2 share of the installed base. We don't need it for the model, but it's useful for some graphs we'll create. Now for product 1 and product 2, there will be some initial installed base. People who already have the product. It may be 0, 1 or some other value. We'll add in a variable to control that. We'll connect that to the stock for each product. Now that we've created the structure of the model, we want to look at it and see where there are any reinforcing loops or balancing loops. Now, a reinforcing loop is what's going to drive growth, sometimes runaway growth. And a balancing loop is going to put a limit on that growth. Until we run the model, we won't really be sure which loop will dominate the behaviour of the system. Now, to work out where the loops are, we look for circularities in our flows. Then to work out if it's a reinforcing loop or a balancing loop, a simple way is to count up the number of negatives on your arrows. If you have an even number of negatives, 0, 2, 4 and so on, then it's a reinforcing loop. If you have an odd number of negatives, 1, 3, 5 and so on, then it's a balancing loop. Here we see we have one reinforcing loop, which we'll name R1 network effect. And here we have one balancing loop, which we'll name B1-1 share saturation. These are a reinforcing loop and a balancing loop for product 1. They're going to drive the sales of that product. Similarly, we have one reinforcing loop and one balancing loop for product 2. Now that we've created the structure of our model, we need to populate it with the equations that are going to drive it. So we start with the installed base of product 1. Now, this is simply the aggregate of all the sales of product 1, and the initial value is provided by the variable we created, initial installed base product 1. Next, we look at the flow of sales of product 1. Here we can see this is the product of two variables, total demand multiplied by market share of product 1. Next, we look at total demand, and we'll set that to 1 million units per year. So, if that was video recorders, we'd expect the market for video recorders to be 1 million products per year. In software, especially large pieces of expensive software, that number may be a lot smaller. Next, we'll look at the market share of product 1. And we've set this to the attractiveness of product 1 divided by the total attractiveness of all products. So, if our product is very attractive, we get a large share of the market. Next, we look at the total attractiveness of all products. This is the sum of the attractiveness of all products, which in our model is the attractiveness of product 1 plus the attractiveness of product 2. So, how do we work out the attractiveness of product 1? Here we set it to the product of two attractiveness values that we input. So, it's equal to the effect of compatibility on attractiveness of product 1 multiplied by the effect of the other factors on attractiveness of product 1. Now you might ask, why is it the product? Why isn't it the sum? The answer is that typically these effects multiply off each other rather than sum up in isolation. Next, we'll look at the effect of compatibility on attractiveness of product 1. Remember, this is the network effect. We'll set it to an exponential value. So we set it here to the exponential of the sensitivity of attractiveness to installed base, multiplied by that installed base, and divided by the threshold for compatibility effects. This means that this equation is only really going to become important when the installed base approaches the threshold value. We set the threshold for compatibility effects to 1 million, which is the total market demand. And we set the sensitivity of attractiveness to installed base to the value of 2. Now, if network effects were important when considering whether to buy this product, say if it was important that lots of your friends had the same product, say a Nintendo or Xbox, so you could borrow games or play together, then this number would be high and we'd see a big network effect. If it was less important, say it was a PC but you couldn't really care what brand of PC your friends or work colleagues had, then this number would be low and you'd see a small network effect. In the effect of other factors on the attractiveness of product 1, this is where we add our random distribution effect, so that a small bit of noise in the system will eventually cause our two products, product 1 and product 2, to diverge. The noise seed is simply an integer. We want a different integer for the two different noise seeds that you see in the model. And in the standard deviation of random effects on attractiveness, we'll insert a step function. This means that we'll inject a little bit of noise beginning at point 0. We'll actually start the simulation before point 0 at -1. We want to see the inputs of our model as we run it. Now, we could look at some graphs at runtime, and the software is able to do that for us, but it's better if we create some proper graphs. We'll create 3 graphs: market share, sales, and share of installed base. And on each of these graphs, we'll have product 1 and product 2, so we can compare them. We'll also put some controls on this view, so that we can make some changes when we run the simulation and see the effects. we've put a slider for noise seed on product 1 and a slider for noise seed for product 2. And we put a slider for the initial installed base of product 1 and product 2. Next, let's run a simulation and see what happens. We click the button, which means that we will start the simulation and then we'll rerun it each time we make any changes on the slider. We can see that starting at time -1, the market share for each product is the same. But beginning from time 0, when we introduce some random noise, the trajectory of the two products begins to diverge. Initially, the divergence is small, but we see that when we get to year 4, the two stocks diverge, and by year 6 there was a definite difference, which continues to increase until we get to year 10, at which point one of the products is effectively dead and the other product has captured all sales of the market. However, if you look at the share of the installed base, what you'll see there is that even though one product, in this case product 2, dominates the sales, the other product, product 1, still has a significant share of the installed base, even though it's dead in the water sales-wise. Now, the divergence between the two products is entirely due to that random noise that we introduce at time 0. We can verify that it's entirely due to that noise because if we change the noise seed, then we can change which product becomes dominant. Here, I'll change the seed for product 1, and you'll see that on some of the noise seed values that the product that is dominant swaps over. Similarly, if I change the seed for product 2, we see the same effect. Now, the important thing to note is that these variations introduced by the noise seed are very small. But those small variations are enough, given the nature of the reinforcing loop, to add up, so that eventually one product dominates. In this model, those variations are due to chance, to random noise. But in a real-life situation, those variations could be due to something other than chance. These variations could be due to different policies pursued by the two organisations, including how they approach their software development. Now, understanding about these mechanisms that cause the growth of a new product is a good thing, but it isn't just a spectator sport. What we're interested in is what can we do to change those trajectories we see on the graph? What can we do to make our product a success? One of the things we can do is give our product sales a boost, perhaps through a sales or marketing campaign. In the next session, we'll see under what circumstances a sales boost could change the trajectory of the market, perhaps changing that final winner. If you've enjoyed this session, please give us a thumbs up in the link below on YouTube. And if you're interested in this topic, please hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you again.